My trust was a vault forged in steel, locked tight with the weight of a lifetime's loyalty. I thought it was unbreakable, until my own sister pried it open, tore out everything I'd built, and left me staring at the wreckage. Do you know what it feels like to realize the person you'd die for is the one holding the crowbar? I'm James, 35, a forensic accountant at Sterling and West. Numbers are my language. Clean, precise, unyielding. Every decimal point is a truth. Every ledger entry a confession. I've spent my career uncovering lies in boardrooms and corporations, but I never imagined I'd have to expose one hiding in my own family. 6 months ago, my world tilted. Mom Elena was diagnosed with stage or pancreatic cancer, the kind of disease that eats hope alive. I didn't hesitate. I wired $90,000 from my savings into an account I set up for her care, trusting my sister Clara to manage it. Use it for Mom's treatments, I told her over the phone. Whatever she needs. Clara lived just an hour from Mom's house in Willow Creek. Close, enough to handle everything. Appointments, medications, even the small comforts that keep a sick person going. She was my little sister, the one I had protected all my life. I'd paid for her college, her first car, even the down payment on her apartment. Every milestone I was there. Every struggle I carried her through, and I believed her. Every text, every update, every promise. Until last Monday when Mom's voice came over the phone, thin and trembling. James, they won't schedule my next round until we pay something, she whispered. Something in me froze. I had trusted Clara, and in that moment, I realized the sister I had raised, supported and believed in, might be the one putting Mom's life at risk. And my family? They were already backing her, painting me as the unreasonable one, the villain in a story I didn't even know I was living. After that call with Mom, a cold knot of dread settled in my chest. Something didn't add up. I could feel it. The numbers in my head, the way my accountant's mind always works, screaming at me. Check everything. I started with the account I had set up for Mom's care. Every transfer, every balance, every little withdrawal. I went line by line. And then I saw it, a large withdrawal. The same week Mom's treatments were supposedly being paid for. Not to the hospital, not for medications, to Clara. I stared at the screen, my hands trembling. This couldn't be right. My little sister, the one I had raised. The one I trusted more than anyone. Siphoning money meant for Mom's survival. I confronted her, trying to keep my voice calm. Clara, I need to know what this withdrawal was for, I said carefully, letting every word carry measured control. Her reply was smooth, practiced, rehearsed. James, you worry too much. Everything's fine. I'm handling it. But her words rang hollow. And the silence on the other end of the line, that pause, that hesitation, told me more than any spreadsheet ever could. Tried talking to Mom. She was too weak to give answers. But the fear in her voice, the way she avoided the truth, only confirmed it. Clara had control, and my family seemed happy to let her run the narrative. Every text, every update I had trusted now looked like a mask. Every promise she made, a lie. I had a decision to make. I could yell, cry, beg, or I could do what I do best, follow the evidence, cold and calculated, until the truth revealed itself. And so I started gathering every piece of data I could, in bank statements, timestamps, payment confirmations, and even surveillance footage from the ATM she supposedly used. The closer I got, the more dangerous it became. Clara didn't just betray me. She was smart, methodical, and confident that our family's loyalty would shield her. But I had something she didn't, the truth. And soon, the numbers would speak louder than her lies. Before I continue, tell, from which place are you watching this story right now? Please subscribe and like the video for motivation. I couldn't sleep. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw the numbers flashing across my mind. Every withdrawal, every transfer, every lie Clara had carefully woven. I had raised her, protected her, trusted her, and now I had to treat her like a criminal. Started tracking her every move. Bank statements were only the beginning. I pulled surveillance footage from the ATM she supposedly used. The cashier at Mom's pharmacy gave me a timeline of her visits. I cross-referenced everything. Every discrepancy screamed at me like a neon sign. She was using Mom's money for herself, and it wasn't small amounts. It was thousands. Luxury shopping, trips she never mentioned, a car payment I had no idea existed. My hands shook as I realized just how much she had taken, how meticulously she had planned it. I confronted her again, this time in person. I stood at the doorway of her apartment, papers in hand. Voice steady but eyes burning. "Clara, I know," I said simply. Her smile was calm, almost smug. "James, you're imagining things. You're overreacting." But I had the proof. Every receipt, every withdrawal, every timestamp. She had painted herself as the victim. And my family was already buying it. "You've betrayed Mom. You've betrayed me," I said. "And you think everyone will believe your lies." "But I have the truth." Her eyes flickered. Just for a second, a crack in the mask. But my family? They were still behind her, convinced that James, the careful, measured brother, had misread the situation. I realized then that this wasn't just about money. It was about trust, power, and control. And if I wanted to save Mom and expose Clara, I had to be smarter, faster, and colder than she ever imagined. I went home that night, surrounded by spreadsheets, photos, and videos, each piece of evidence a hammer, each fact a nail. And I knew the family meeting was coming. Clara thought she was ready, but she had no idea what was waiting for. Or Clara called the family meeting herself, of course. It wasn't an apology or even a discussion. It was a performance. Invitations were sent with subtle phrasing. "We need to talk about James's concerns." Subtext clear. "He's the problem." I arrived early, carrying a folder thick with evidence, bank statements, transaction logs, receipts, even snapshots from the ATM footage. My heart pounded not with fear but anticipation. The truth was ready to speak for itself. The living room was filled with Mom, Aunt Lorraine, Uncle Peter, and a few cousins, all of them subtly leaning toward Clara as she stood at the head of the room, radiant and composed, the picture of innocence. "James has been making accusations," Clara began, her voice smooth, almost theatrical. "Accusations about money, about trust, about me. I know he means well, but sometimes he overreacts." There it was, the pivot. She framed herself as the victim, casting me as unreasonable, paranoid, exactly what I expected. I didn't respond. Not yet. I let her speak. Each word, each pause, was a thread I was gathering to unravel her story. Then calmly, I opened my folder. "Let's review the facts," I said. Voice steady, eyes on Mom. I spread the documents across the table. "Here's every transaction I made for Mom's care. Here's where the money actually went. Here's the ATM footage, showing Clara withdrawing it. Herself." A quiet gasp echoed through the room. Clara's mask faltered for just a heartbeat. My mother's eyes widened, the first hint of fear, or maybe recognition, flickering across her face. Clara stammered, tried to pivot. "James." "You're being dramatic. I needed money for bills." "But not Mom's treatments," I interrupted, holding up the ATM printout like a judge's gavel. "Not for the life-saving care you promised to provide." Some family members shifted uncomfortably, unsure where to look. They had trusted Clara, but the evidence was undeniable. The camera footage, the receipts, the timestamps, it wasn't opinion anymore. It was fact. "You see, everyone," I said, my voice calm but sharp. "I'm not accusing without proof. The proof is right here. The money meant for Mom's survival was used for Clara's personal benefit. And she expected you all to believe her lies." Mom reached for my hand, trembling. "James, I didn't know." Clara's eyes flashed with anger. "You think this changes anything? You think they'll side with you over me?" "They already know the truth," I said, closing the folder. "The evidence doesn't lie. And soon, neither will you." For the first time that day, the room went silent. Clara realized she wasn't performing for an audience anymore. She was facing the consequences of her own deceit. And in that silence, I felt a surge of something I hadn't allowed myself in months. Control, power, justice. This meeting was supposed to shame me. Instead, it had become the stage for the truth to expose her. The room was still. Clara's confident facade was cracking, thin as paper, ready to tear. I could see it in her eyes, that fleeting panic that comes only when someone realizes they've been caught. I took a deep breath and laid out the evidence, systematically, each point hitting like a hammer. "Here's the first withdrawal," I said, sliding a receipt across the table. "Not for Mom's care, but a luxury store in the city." I let it sink in. Clara's lips pressed into a thin line. "Here's the second transfer," I continued, "used for your car payment. Remember the one Mom had no knowledge of?" Gasps rippled around the room. Even a few family members who had blindly backed her shifted uncomfortably. The weight of the truth was settling in. Then, came the final piece, the ATM footage. I played the video on my laptop. Clara withdrawing cash, smiling to herself, ignoring the fact that every step, every swipe, every dollar was documented. Silence swallowed the room. Mom clutched my hand, tears brimming. "You've betrayed, Mom," I said softly, but with an edge of steel. "You've betrayed me. And you thought everyone would believe your lies." Clara's voice shook now, brittle with anger and desperation. "James, I didn't mean—" "You did mean it," I interrupted. "Every transaction, every lie, every attempt to paint me as unreasonable. It was intentional." I looked around at the family, and anyone who claims they didn't see this coming. I invite you to review the facts. They don't lie. The footage doesn't lie. The receipts don't lie. For a moment the room was frozen in disbelief. Then murmurs spread. My family, the same ones who had sided with her blindly, now had to face the undeniable truth. Some faces turned red with guilt. Some avoided my eyes. Mom finally spoke, her voice trembling but resolute. "Clara, how could you do this?" Clara dropped her head, unable to meet anyone's gaze. Her arrogance had evaporated, leaving only shame. I felt a mix of exhaustion and satisfaction. This wasn't joy, it was justice. Mom's care would be secured. Clara's betrayal exposed, and the balance restored not with anger, but with truth and evidence. And in that moment, I understood something vital. Betrayal doesn't have power unless you allow it. I hadn't allowed it. I had taken control, calmly, methodically, with the precision only numbers can give. The family meeting that was meant to shame me had done the opposite. It had revealed her fully to everyone, and I knew the next steps would be delicate. But one thing was certain: Clara would never be able to manipulate our lives again. The day after the family meeting, the house was strangely quiet. Clara hadn't spoken to anyone, and my family's whispers filled the gaps where words should have been. Even Mom, frail and weary, seemed to carry the weight of the confrontation in every step. Knew this was the part no one talks about, the aftermath. Betrayal doesn't just end when the truth is exposed. It ripples through every relationship, every habit, every glance. And in this house, every eye now measured me, James, the brother who had uncovered it all. Some with admiration, some with guilt, others with subtle resentment for being proven right. Clara tried to retreat into her old defenses, but I could see through them. She stayed in her room, scrolling endlessly through her phone, maybe plotting, maybe trying to salvage a narrative. But the network of lies she had woven had collapsed like a house of cards. Every document, every video, every meticulous record I had kept ensured she had nowhere to hide. Mom, weak but determined, called me to her side that afternoon. She held my hand in both of hers, trembling but firm. "James, thank you," she whispered, her voice cracking. "You saved me. And maybe even her. I wish things didn't have to be this way." "I know, Mom," I said. But sometimes the only way to protect people is to face the truth, no matter how painful. Even some of the relatives who had sided with Clara began to quietly apologize, their shame visible. They realized they had been manipulated by her charm, blinded by loyalty to the wrong person. Clara finally emerged later that evening. She was subdued, her pride shattered. She didn't speak, didn't argue, didn't try to gaslight anyone. The house was no longer her stage. It belonged to truth, and she had lost control. I didn't confront her further. The evidence had done the work I couldn't trust words to finish. Instead, I focused on the next steps, securing Mom's treatments directly, bypassing her completely, and making sure Clara couldn't misuse her position again. I set up direct payments to the hospital, monitored every transaction, and even arranged for additional safeguards. Everything accounted for, every dollar traceable. In the days that followed, Clara avoided eye contact, and I could see the weight of what she had done pressing down on her. The family, though still fractured, slowly began to reconcile with the reality. They saw me not as the angry brother trying to ruin his sister, but as the protector of the person who mattered most, Mom. For the first time in months, I slept without the gnawing anxiety of uncertainty. I had won the battle without losing my integrity, but the experience had left its mark. Betrayal by family is a wound that doesn't fully heal. It lingers in the quiet moments, in the way people look at you, in the trust you can never give blindly again. Yet there was something profoundly empowering in knowing that when truth, evidence, and patience meet deception, justice doesn't need anger. It simply needs clarity. And I had that. Clara's betrayal had shaken the foundations of our family, but in its wake, it also revealed who truly valued honesty, loyalty, and care. And I knew as I sat with Mom that night that no matter what else happened, I had protected her, and finally, myself, from the chaos that comes when deceit is allowed to thrive. Weeks passed after the confrontation, but the house never fully returned to what it had been. Silence lingered in corners where laughter used to live, and every glance carried the memory of betrayal. Yet within that quiet, there was also clarity, the kind that comes only when deception is exposed, and truth becomes impossible to ignore. Clara kept to herself, moving through the house like a shadow. She avoided conversations, meals, even brief encounters with Mom or me. The arrogance that once defined her had been stripped away, replaced by guilt, shame, and an uncomfortable awareness that she could no longer manipulate those around her. I, on the other hand, felt a strange mix of exhaustion and relief. The evidence I had meticulously gathered, the hours spent cross-referencing transactions, and the courage it took to confront my sister, all of it had led to a result I hadn't dared hope for. Mom was safe. Her treatments were uninterrupted. The funds I had entrusted were secure, and for the first time in months, I felt the weight in my chest lift. Slightly, but the real victory wasn't just financial. It was moral. Clara had tried to twist loyalty into manipulation, love into leverage, and trust into a weapon. She had failed, and our family, though shaken, had witnessed the truth. Even those who had initially supported her began to quietly acknowledge the reality they had ignored. Mom, though frail, held my hand one evening, her eyes wet but steady. "James," she whispered, "you saved more than my health. You saved my peace of mind. You reminded everyone what loyalty really means." I nodded, trying to hide the exhaustion behind a faint smile. "I only did what anyone who loved you would have done, Mom. I just followed the facts. And sometimes, facts are stronger than emotions." Clara never spoke about the betrayal again. She avoided the financial discussions, Mom's appointments, even the family gatherings. Over time, the tension softened slightly, but the memory of what had happened lingered like an unspoken scar. It was a reminder of how fragile trust can be, even within the people you love most. Spent evenings reviewing everything, not out of suspicion, but to ensure nothing could ever happen again. My spreadsheets, my records, my notes, they became both shield and proof, a safeguard against deception. I realized something crucial. In a world where people can manipulate appearances and twist truths, knowledge, preparation, and evidence are the strongest forms of protection. And yet, amidst the lingering tension, there was also hope. I had faced the betrayal, exposed it without losing my integrity, and protected Mom. I had proven that love doesn't have to be blind. It can be wise, measured, and resilient. As I sat by the window that evening, Mom resting in the other room, I thought about the journey we had endured, the lies, the tension, the confrontation, and finally, the truth. Clara had tried to steal trust and manipulate hearts, but the truth had prevailed. And in that victory, I found a quiet sense of peace. The family may never be the same. Clara may never reclaim the innocence she once wore like armor. But Mom was safe. Justice had been served, and I, James, had emerged stronger, wiser, and unbroken. Because in the end, betrayal doesn't define you. How you respond does. And I had responded with clarity, courage, and the unwavering certainty that truth, once uncovered, cannot be silenced.